stuff. Unfortunately, it's the situation that is happening in the United States right now. And so what we wanted to do is bring audiences into that front line to see exactly how you as an individual and telling your story can really change the way in which your community is treated under the law. The other two people that we made films about were Aiden Crawford. He's a Native American. His story is really about transgender people being here throughout the entirety of time. This isn't a new thing. This isn't a trend. This is something that has been part of societies. And he is a historian that really takes action to make sure that his community and his traditions move forward into the next generation. And the last person is Aidan Siebel. He is an American who lives in Missoula, Montana. During his personal journey, he moved to Philadelphia for a while because he thought that living in a city would make it easier to be accepted for who he is. Ultimately, he realized that just because of his identity, that doesn't dictate where he should live. So he moved back to Montana to transition and has found in that life his family, his friends, and his community. So each of the stories really illuminate in some way the ways in which individuals in America are taking action to advance the agenda of equality for all. And speaking on that note, we will talk about more specifically how equality is being used through storytelling in Massachusetts with Mason.
Great, thank you so much. So our stories as trans people are a critical element in how we have seen wins for transgender equality across the country, but specifically here in Massachusetts. So here in Massachusetts, we are actually the next battleground for transgender rights in many ways. The fact is, unfortunately, that our rights to access public spaces as transgender people are up for a vote this November on the ballot. And that makes us the first state in the country to be voting on the human rights of transgender people. The first state in the country to be putting up our rights to access public spaces on a ballot this November. And so that makes us the next battleground for transgender rights by being the first. Now, the question number is question 3, and so for folks here who are registered to vote here in Massachusetts, I hope you'll pay attention to question 3 on the ballot. A yes vote will mean that we affirm and keep transgender rights to access public spaces, whereas a no vote will get rid of those important legal protections that we've had now in place for 2 years. But I get a lot of questions about what are public spaces. And unfortunately, opponents to transgender equality have framed this around bathrooms and locker rooms and other sex-segregated spaces. But what's important to understand is that actually what we are voting on is the ability for transgender people to access any place that is open to or solicits patronage from the public. We're talking about restaurants and coffee shops. We're talking about hospitals. We're actually talking about this City Hall Plaza is a public accommodation as well. And my ability to be here free from discrimination or harassment is what's up for a vote this November. So sure, yes, there are bathrooms involved in as much as there's a bathroom at the hospital or a bathroom here at City Hall Plaza. But what's really important to understand is it doesn't revolve around that alone. What it revolves around and what is important to remember is that the human rights and the dignity of transgender people in Massachusetts is what we are voting on with question 3 this November. In doing this work, we have realized and really come to understand the importance of personal stories and narratives. We have seen that people may not know who we are as transgender, people may not understand our stories or where we come from, but when you look at a person who is transgender, a person who is saying, please vote on my ability to access public spaces and just exist in the public sphere, it gets a lot harder to vote against those human rights. And so every day in communities across Massachusetts, we have trans folks out there telling their stories, telling folks why this is important to us, why our human rights should be affirmed this November, and critical elements like the virtual reality and YouTube and social media are just other tools we can use to hopefully win votes and affirm our rights and dignity on the ballot this November. So for more information about question 3 and the coalition that we have working on this, you can go to freedommassachusetts.org. If you're interested in canvassing or phone banking or getting involved, I think it's so important in this moment as we are seeing human rights really taking front and center in so many conversations across the country that each of us can do something. Each of us can get involved to affirm and remind ourselves that we are part of a larger community that prioritizes the human rights and dignity for all. I moved to Massachusetts over 10 years ago because I knew that this was a state that I could be myself, that I could be affirmed, and that my human rights wouldn't be something that would be voted on. Unfortunately, that is actually where we are now, and that my rights to access public spaces are being voted on this November. But I still believe in my heart of hearts that the state of Massachusetts will do the right thing and vote yes on 3 this November. So if you are a Massachusetts voter, if you are involved in politics in any way, I hope you will spread this information, spread the knowledge about question 3 here in Massachusetts, and plan to vote yes on 3 this November. And if not, well, if you're not a Massachusetts voter, you can still be involved, you can still spread this awareness. But at the end of the day, I hope that you will hear the stories of transgender people, hear who we are through virtual reality, through social media, or just have a conversation with a trans person to remind you that, yes, we may have some aspect of our identity that seems a little different to many people, but at the end of the day, we are humans. And we just want to be able to exist and go about our lives in public spaces like anyone else. And so vote yes on 3, get involved, and have those conversations. That's how we're going to change the world for transgender rights. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.